guys, and welcome back to my channel. It's Kid Bombing here. I hope you're doing well, and thank you ever so much to support me on this YouTube channel. I really appreciate you guys. You are absolutely awesome and so supportive to me. And I hope you enjoyed watching my videos, like read aloud. Guys, I guess you loved it so far. Right, okay, so I was still on halfway through of reading Disney Fairies, Tinkerbell and Friends. Yes, Tinkerbell Friends indeed. After being reading 5 parts. First five parts, of course. Okay, so let's go. What was I? Oh, 104, page 140. Right, are you ready to listen to me while I read to you? Yeah? I guess you fancy that? I hope you already subscribed to my channel. You know, hit the bell notification when you see it through our intro. You can always look at my Instagram and Twitter and Pinterest. That would really much appreciate you guys to get me extra support, my contents. Okay, so shall we continue reading through Tinkerbell and Friends, shall we? Come and get it. She steps back a little. The mice strained towards her. Come on, the fairy urged. Acorn bread? More than you have ever had before. You can have it. Or all if you just try. And mice did try. They loved that bread more than anything. Much more than the sweet grass seeds they were usually fed. They strained towards the bread. Their little claws dug into the ground. The courtyard echoed with the sounding of her squeaking. The other fairies cheered them on. You can do it, mice. Get the bread. Move the ball. Can you do it? You can do it. The ball wobbled. The mice leaned into the harness. And the ball moved. Not a lot. Maybe a half inch. But move it. But it moved. It's working, Tink, cried Terence. He gave her enormous smile and clapped her on the back. It's working, the other fairies echoed. Tink's face was flushed. Her eyes shone. All her attention was focused on the cannonball. It moved another half inch and snap! The rope run the cannonball broke. The mice leaped forward, suddenly free from the weight. They lunged at the bread in the mouse herder's hands and quickly began to gobble it down. The fairy stopped in the mid-chair. Everyone let out a disappointed Marsh grass, said Florian. She shook her head. It's always make a stronger rope. Tink flew over to look at the mice. They were still panting for the effort of pulling the ball. Their furry sides heaved in and out. Do you think that you could do it again? She asked one of the mice herding fairies. If we made a stronger rope, that is. The fairy shook her head. I don't think so, she said. It may wear them out. Dairy mice can be quite delicate, you know. If they got too tired, they'd stop giving milk. Tink's shoulders slump, but she tried hard not to show her disappointment. Well, she said, it was a good try. We'll just have to think of something else. Queen Clarion spoke up. Maybe that's enough work for one day, she said gently. The cannibal won't go anywhere before tomorrow. Why don't we all get cleaned up and have some dinner? The fairies murmured their agreement. Not only they all tried, they were also very hungry. As the other fairies headed into the home tree, Tink lingered behind. Well, Tink, you wanted a challenge, she said to herself. And now you've got one. She stood up at the huge cannonball. But am I up to it? She wondered. Because the kitchen was such a mess, the dinner that night was simple. Acorn butter sandwich with dandelion salad. The tired fairies ate quickly. The sun had already set. After a long, hard day of work, they were eager to go to bed. As soon as she had eaten, Tink realized she had a problem. She had nowhere to sleep. She watched as the other fairies headed for their rooms, all in all their excitement over the cannonball. They had forgotten that Tink didn't have her own room to go to. The tea room slowly emptied. Tink remained sitting at her table. She wasn't sure what to do. As the shadows lengthened, she felt more and more forlorn. At last, Granny noticed Tink sitting alone. She realized the problem at once. Tink, she said, what will you do tonight? I think maybe I'll just sleep outside, Tink replied bravely. I can use a maple leaf as a blanket. You can sleep in my room, Granny told her. It's better than sleeping outside anywhere. Okay, Tink said. She felt relieved. I would like that. I'm awfully tired. Tink followed Granny up to the room. She had visited Granny's room many times before, but until that evening, she hadn't noticed the details. She looked around at the blue-green balls and the seaweed curtains hanging in the windows. The floor was pavered with a smooth river stones. It seemed like a quiet, peaceful place. Tink was looking forward to the good night's sleep. I think I'm already going to bed, yawned Tink. Why should I sleep? I could pile loads of blankets on the floor, Granny suggested. Let me help you, said Tink. Together, they piled woven fun blankets on the floor until they had made a soft bed. That should be very comfortable, Tink said. When they had finished, but she could not help noticing how humid Mummy's room was. Even the blankets felt damp. Tink settled herself on the pile. She was so tired. She was sure she had fallen asleep in a moment. Granny covered her up with a sheet, which was also slightly damp. Good night, dear friend, she said. Then she climbed into her own room, which was made from driftwood. She pulled a seaweed quilt up into her chin. Tink lay on her back, gazing at the great blue-green ceiling. It was nice of Granny to take me in, she thought. Then she closed her eyes and gave in to her tiredness. Seconds later, Tink opened her eyes. She could feel the lump beneath the pile of blankets. It was one of the weatherstones that pathed the floor. Tink tried turning on her side, but that was no better. She flopped over on her stomach, but that was even worse. She ended up on her back again. Tink thought wistfully of the comfy life-pan bed and the soft, dappled light that came through the colander lampshades in her room. How she loved to fall asleep beneath the still life of stock pot and whisk and riddle, and now it was gone, all gone. Tink, moonlight filtered in through the seaweed curtains. Suddenly, Tink gasped and jumped up. Two long arms seemed to reach out to her from a corner of the room. Granny heard her and sat straight up. What's the matter? She cried. There's something in the corner, whispered Tink. She was almost too scared to breathe. Where? I don't see it, whispered Granny. She followed a direction of Tink's pointing finger, but the room was too dark. They couldn't see clearly. Quickly, Granny, light a scallop shell lamp. Then she started to giggle. That's just my clothes hanging on the clothes tree, Tink. It's made from a coral branch, remember? Gradually, Tink's heart stopped racing. Her breath returned to normal. Oh, she said, so it is. Now she felt foolish. She wished more than ever that she could be in her own bed. Granny turned up the light. They settled back to sleep, back down to sleep. Tink tried to drift off. She really did. But the pathing rocks were not getting any softer, and then she became aware of another thing. Drip, 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 drip. It was a slow, steady rhythm. Tink had forgotten all about Granny's drip. She had a permanent leak on her room. Whether it was raining or not, beneath a leak sat a black bucket made from a human-sized thimble. Inside the bucket, a never minnow swam contentedly around. Drip, 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 drip. By now, Tink had given up trying to sleep. She lay on her back and stared at the ceiling. Every now and then she shifted her reins under the damp sheet to find a better position. Sometime before dawn, Tink heard a new noise. It was Granny crying. Granny, whispered Tink, are you all right? There was no answer, just more crying. Tink brightened her glow so she could see Granny a little better. Granny was sounded asleep, weeping onto the pillow. The air in the room was getting damper and damper. Granny, Tink tried again. Wake up, are you having a bad dream? Still, Granny did not wake. Tink finally gave up and went back to the staring at the ceiling. She listened to the dripping water and Granny's crying. A little after dawn, Granny awoke. She sat up in the bed and stretched her arms towards the ceiling. I just had a most wonderful dream, she said when she saw that Tink was awake. No, you didn't. You had an awful dream, Tink snapped. She was fairly cross. Haven't slept a wink the whole night. Granny gave her a strange look and shook her head. No, it was long and wonderful, she said. I was playing with a big ball of water. I was tossing it back and forth with a silver mist and Tolly. We could throw it as high as the top of a home tree and make a rainbow in the room from sunlight. It was so beautiful. Now it was Tink's turn to give Granny a strange look. But were you crying? She insisted. Cupfuls, buckets and barrels fed your beds as all. Granny broke into the big grin. Rat, she finished. I was crying in a dream, too. Crying from happiness. Tink just shook her head. She got up from the damp, lumpy bed. Granny, she said, are you my very good friend? But I am a pots and pans fairies, and you are a water fairy. And I will never truly understand you. She smiled and gave Granny a hug. Granny's eyes filled with tears again. You are my good friend too. And I will never nearly understand you either, she said, hugging Tink back. She wiped her eyes with a leaf kerchief. Do you want to go have some breakfast? Yes, said Tink. But marines are too damp to fly. Granny picked up another leaf kerchief and gently dried Tink's wings. Then I went downstairs for breakfast. Breakfast was very good as usual. Platters of those wonderful pumpkin muffins and pots of blackberry tea sat on every table in the tea room, but no breakfast would have been delicious enough to cheer Tink up that morning. Tink was tired, she was damp, and she wanted her room back. She stared grimly at the serving platter in the front of her. It reminded her of her platter, frying pan, spoon, chair. Worth night? Asked Angus. He was sitting next to Tink at the pots and pans table. Just a little damp, said Tink with a She took a sip of tea. But don't worry, I'm ready to get back to work. I'll have that cannonball out of her picture hollow in no time. Even to her own ears, she did not sound very sure. Tinkerbell, a cheerful voice exclaimed. Tink turned around. Green, a tiny decoration turned fairy, was beaming at her. Are you ready to start putting your room back together? Grin asked. Cedar and I are heading up there now to get started. She gestured at Cedar, who was standing behind her. Cinder was the biggest, strongest looking fairy Tinkerbell had ever seen. She was nearly 6 inches tall. It was clear through a hammer I saw Cedar was carrying that she was a carpenter turned fairy. Cedar nodded shyly in greeting. Her great height made Grin look even tinier. Usually, prepare the rooms for fairies who have just arrived in Neverland. Grin continued. She spoke very, very fast. Tink had to concentrate to keep up. Of course, we don't know them yet, so we just make our best guess about what that fairy might want, and then we hope she likes it. But you are already here. I've never helped the fairy decorate her room before. You can tell me exactly what you want. It will be perfect. Perfect, right, Cedar. Cedar nodded and stared bashfully at the ground. Tink bit her lip. She decided to rebuild in her room, but the promise to get rid of Cannonball. Angus read her mind. You can work on the Cannonball later. Tink after you, and Drain decide what your new room should look like. He pointed it out. Tink thought about it for a moment. Anger was right. The Cannonball could wait. All right, Tink said. She smiled. Let's go. A short time later, Tink was watching certain hammer planks into the walls of her new room. Green flew from one corner to the next, measuring the space with her eyes. She kept up a steady stream of chatter. You will want silver paint. Drink told Tink, or maybe gold, or something copper. Oh yes, copper could be just lovely with the sunlight. Coming in, silver would be fine, said Tink, trying to keep up. As I suppose you'd like colander lampshades again. Green one went on. Or fight a nice oasis paddle. Lantern would give a room a softer look. Colanders, please. Tink cut in. She was surprised to find she was having fun. And you need a curtains, a bread spread, and some rug. Drain stepped from the corner to corner. She was making the Tink dizzy. Tink sat down in the middle of the bare floor to watch her. Grain will make sure that was a bright colour, Tink thought, and she will get a new colanders for the lamp. But Drain couldn't make her another still life painting, and Cedar couldn't make her another life pan bed. If I want my room back just the way it was, Tink thought, I'm going to have to take matters into my own hands. I'll be back in a little while, she told Grin and Cinder. Cedar mumbled goodbye through a mouthful of nails. Green absent-mindedly waved some curtains fabric at her. Tink flew out for the open ceiling and the other woods of Pixie Hollows. Soon, Tink arrived at the Betsy's studio. It was made from an old tangerine crate that the art tenant fairy had set up in the remote clearing in the woods, where she could paint in the peace and quiet. Tink found Bet's hard work. She was painting a portrait of an animal tenant fairy. The animal tenant fairy posed on a cushion, holding her favourite ladybird on her lip. Tink, Beth said. She sat down on her brush and hugged her friend. What a terrible thing to happen to your room. Is there everything I can do to help? Actually, there is, said Tink. She explained that she needed another still life of a stockpot, whisk, and graddle to hand over her bed. Bess looked a little embarrassed. "Oh, Tink," she said, unhappy. "Of course I'll paint a new picture for you, but I won't be able to get to for it for a while. I have already promised painters to 5 other fairies." So Animal Town Fairy cleared her throat impatiently. The ladybird on her lip was still getting restless. Bess gave Tink another hug, then got back to work. Tink flew off, trying not to feel discouraged. Her next stop was a kitchen. She hopped to find some pots and pans that were beyond repair. With luck, she could make another frying pan chair exactly look like her old one. Dulcie met Tink at the kitchen door. She was carrying a tray of pretty little tea cakes. As Dulcie set the cakes on the windowsill to cool, Tink asked her if she had any pots, pans and spoons, whisks or other kitchen items she needed to get rid of. "Well," replied Dulcie, there was fat salad fork with bent tines. I was ready to give it up on it, but Angus fixed it. Last week, it's been perfectly pointy and prongly ever since. The other fairy pots and pans fairies are too good at their jobs." Tink thought. She took and her fringe and gave a frustrated She didn't want to make a chair out of objects that were still useful. Tink could usually fix almost everything, but here was something that couldn't be fixed, at least not right away. "Ugh!" cried Tink. She shot 3 inches into the air with a sheer frustration. Her room was smashed, and even when it was fixed, it still wouldn't feel like her room. After all, where was she going to find another loaf-pan bed? That cannibal will regret the day it fell into Pixie Hollow. Tink followed, and Captain Hook will regret it even more. Tink soon into a courtyard. She flew right up to the cannibal and gave it a mighty kick. "Ow!" Tink danced through the air, clutching her toes and grimacing in pain. A few fairies had been flying by, stared at Tink in astonishment. Once her toes stopped hurting, Tink found that she felt much calmer. But now she was more determined than ever to get rid of a big bad bull. "This cannibal is going to move," she cried. "I'm going to banish it from Pixie Hollow once and for all. But I'm going to need help from every fairy and sparrow man. Tink, together we can do it. Now, who's with me?" But the other fairies didn't jump up as Tink hoped they would. "I don't know, maybe we could learn to live with a cannibal," said one of the decoration talent fairies. "We could probably fix it to make it look nice." The other decoration talent fairies brightened up a bit. "We could," one agreed. "We can decorate it with hollow hawk garlands and Daisy's chain. Or we could paint it a pretty shade of green to sort of blend in," said another. "Maybe a nice sage colour. But you want to get rid of it?" Tink asked, astonished. Well, of course we do, Tink, said Beck, who happened to be in the courtyard. But we want to get back to doing what we usually do. We are busy. With our own talents. Tink couldn't believe what was she hearing. Were the other fairies given up already? But before they had even tried. We have fun in the courtyard, don't we? She said. It's part of our home. How we will feeling looking at this cannonball every time we came out of a hollow home tree. We'll never be able to have a meeting or the party here again. Even it's decorated and painted, it will still take up too much room. Several fairies murmured in agreement, but no one volunteered to help. We tried moving it yesterday and we couldn't. A water-talent fairy sparrow man pointed out, I know we can do this, Tink, replied. We just have to figure out how. Just then, Terence flew up. It was holding up a teacup in one hand. In his other hand was a sack of fairy dust. Tink, you didn't get your fairy dust yet today, did you? He said. As a dust-turning fairy sparrow man, Terence handed out dust to everyone in Pixar Hollow. They got one teacupful per day. The dust was what allowed the fairies to fly and do magic. As Terence poured dust all over Tink, her eyes widened. That's it. I know how can we move the cannonball, she cried. The fairies in the courtyard perked up. How, Tink? Terence asked. We move the big things with balloons carriers, right? Tink said. Balloon carriers? Where the buckets attached to? Very dust-filled balloons. The fairies used them to move things they were too heavy to carry. That's what I'll do with a cannonball. Well, we'll build a big, giant balloon and use lots of extra fairy dust to give it a more lift. We can float the cannonball away. It's a good idea, said Terence. Other fairies nodded. Even Angus looked impressed. Send word to your other dust-turning fairies, Tink told Terence. I'll need all the fairies' dust they can spare. The rest of us will get a balloon carrier ready. This was easier said than done. In order to attach the balloon to the cannonball, they would need heavy ropes. Tink found Lauren and explained her plan. We will use marsh grass this time, Lauren said with certainty, and we will make it extra thick. She got a weaving talent fairies together, and they set out to collect long strands of tough marsh grasses, which would weave into the strongest whip they could make. Next, Tink went to the sewing talent fairies. She asked them to make her spider silk balloons, the biggest one Pixie Hollow had ever seen. It was afternoon by time of the weaving talent fairies finished making the ropes, but they looked sturdy for this time. They were nearly as thick as a fairy's wrist. The weavers secured ropes around the bottom of the cannonball. Then it was time to touch the balloon. The sewing talent fairies sewed the ends of each ropes to the edges of a balloon. At last, the whole contraption was ready to go. It was time for the dust talent fairies and sparrow men to do their work. But now a crowd had gathered. Everyone watched, hardly daring to breathe as Terence and a dust talent sparrow man named Jerem began to fill the balloon with his fairy dust. Instead of the teacups they were usually used to hand out the dust, they scooped up a big mounts of it with a spade they had borrowed from a garden talent fairies. The balloon stared up to rise up. The fairies watched in wonder. Soon the balloon was completely inflated. It strained against the ropes. The ropes could pull taut, but the cannibal stayed stubbornly on the ground. More fairy dust, cried Tink. Terence and Jerem flew up to the top of the balloon and sprinkled more spadefuls of dust into it. They sprinkled some dust onto the cannibal for good measure. The balloon strained harder and harder. All the fairy sparrowmen strained with it. Their muscles were tense. Their wings vibrated in the sheer concentration. The fairies glowed brightly as they willed the balloon to rise. And finally it did. The grass ropes pulled tighter, and the cannibal could resist no longer. It lifted off the ground. It's going, shouted Tink. First, it rose just a hair off the ground, no more than the thickness of Fairy's wings. Then reached the heights of the 2 hairs. Then it was almost high up as Tink's knees, and then higher. Then Fairy's head. It was working. It was really working. If the fairies and sparrowmen had not been so caught up in the progress of the cannibal, they might have noticed that strong breeze and sprang up, but they did not notice until pow, hiss. What was that? Tink cried in alarm. What was it? They soon discovered. Was a horse chestnut. The spiky green globe had fallen from the nearby horse chestnut tree, and the wind had been blowing just in the right direction to push it into a balloon. The horse chestnut spikes had pierced a delicate spike silk, hissing last only a second. The cannonball landed back in the courtyard with a great thud. Inside the tray, delicate cups and saucers could be heard shattering in the tea room. The fairies grunt. Well, that's the end of that, Angus said. But that wasn't the end, for the cannonball had got just a start it needed to roll it to begin to roll. The ball, Granny cried. Look out! Several fairies leaped out of her way just in time. There was a very slight slope away from the home tree, but there was enough. The cannonball rolled it down. Hooray! A decoration talent fairy yelled. Goodbye, Bull. Good weddings, added Butterfly Herder. The other fairies joined in the cheering, but Tink followed a Bull's progress, throwing. It's great that we got it going, but she began. Now, we didn't know where it's going. Granny finished for her. Exactly, said Tink. Okay, so obviously we can start here on 188 on this page. Okay, so we're going to stop there for now, and then we're going to take a break from reading Tinkerbell and Friends. Okay, so if you haven't enjoyed it so far, and give a little comment, just give a comment and give a thumbs up if you enjoyed reading with me. Okay, so I'm going to stop there, and then I'm going to take a break. Then we will continue on a final part of reading Tinkerbell. That is getting heading into conclusion. So if you want to stay tuned of more read aloud videos. Okay, so that's it for all, guys, and I hope you have a nice day.